What is the scariest theory you know about? Forgive me for this poor job I'm about to do describing it, since I forget the name of it, but I recently read here on Reddit that as humans have a defense mechanism, where we can see something that is non-human, but mimicking a human such as a realistic wax figure, and know that something is off. The theory was that in our evolution there was a predator that could mimic being human that we had to adapt and develop this defense mechanism for. The rebuttal to this theory was that it comes from us seeing dead bodies through sickness or disease, and not blatant Neanderthal murder or death from an animal, through our evolution, and learning that something is wrong / out of the ordinary and a cause for concern. The possibility that I'm just a brain in a jar and my entire life is just something my brain fabricated to keep itself entertained. Everything and everyone I have ever known is a figment of imagination. Every method I can conceive to prove this idea wrong is also just part of the dream logic my brain has created to make sense of the illusion that is my existence. The butterfly effect kind of freaks me out because it suggests that every little action could be part of a series of events that leads to something much more impactful. For example, I could drop a pencil, which distracts someone for a few seconds, causing them to miss the bus, and after a few billion seemingly insignificant events World War III begins. So I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but I learned this in a class I took last semester. There's a theory that says that there is a point that no intelligent life can get past, no matter what they do. Diving deeper into this, some people claim this is why we haven't found any other intelligent life forms. I think the truly scary part about it is that we won't know we are at that point until we are living it. That AI, self-replicating and immortal, has a better chance of colonizing this galaxy than biological life does. Think about it. It took hundreds of millions of years for life to get to this point. From a ball of proteins to multicellular creatures to plants and animals, took an incredible amount of time. Back in the late 1970s, I was playing with computers that had 4K of RAM. 40 years later we have incredible computing power in the palms of our hands, hundreds of gigs, and terabyte micro SD cards. Robotic manufacturing of everything from circuit boards to vehicles is the norm. Where will this tech be in a couple hundred years? Will AI be able to design and launch spacecraft that are capable of self-maintenance for the hundreds, maybe thousands, of years it would take to reach the nearest exoplanets? Once they arrive, will they be capable of self-replication? Machines don't need food and water. Machines aren't susceptible to disease or mental health issues. Machines don't seek power or authority and don't victimize each other for amusement. What if the purpose of human life in the universe is to facilitate the creation of AI and launch its spread into the wild? This could backfire. Read the Berserker series by Fred Saberhagen for more. We don't know whether the universe is in a true vacuum, lowest possible energy state, or a false vacuum, a local low, but not the lowest. If the universe is a false vacuum, at any point, at any moment, a quantum tunneling event could occur where that point spontaneously decays to a true vacuum. If that happened, a bubble would expand from that point at the speed of light that radically altered physics, instantly annihilating everything down to the subatomic level. Since it travels at sea, there'd be no warning, no way to see it coming. When it reached us, you'd just instantly blink out of existence. Even if we are in a false vacuum, such an event doesn't become likely for at least 10,139 years, but it could happen at any moment at any point. It could have already happened, and the bubble could be heading straight for us, about to end us at any t. The uncanny valley. You know, the sense of unease and discomfort you feel when you look at a near-realistic animation of a human face, like imperfect deepfakes or flawed CGI faces in movies. It implies that there might have been a point in our species' evolution where we had legit reasons to be afraid of something that looked almost human, but wasn't. Fractalization theories. Everything that exists is a tiny part of a bigger thing. In a brief summary, our galaxy is a part of space, but is space a small part of something larger? Think of a smaller object containing its own galaxy. A speck of a rock may contain its own microscopic cosmos that we cannot see. It may be composed of its own organisms smaller than a single electron, and that civilization is more advanced than we are. We know all matter contains their own gravitational force, but we don't exactly know why. The fact that, if aliens do exist, they are either billions of years ahead of us, or we are billions of years ahead of them. It would be virtually impossible for them to become sentient around the same time as us, especially if you consider how old the universe actually is. The AI takeover theory. There are several variations of the theory, but the basic gist of it is this: eventually, society will be filled with billions of robots who can perform human-like functions. The theory is, some of these robots will become so intelligent and so erratic that they literally malfunction, go crazy, and eradicate mankind. Meaning, we would all die of slow painful deaths of being beat to death by robots, metal pieces / punches / pounds, etc. And the scariest part about this theory is it won't be quick. Some variations of the theory say it could take years for this human extinction to occur. I don't know how realistic it is, but the late Stephen Hawking thought it sounded possible. There's nothing after we die. All of our memories, experiences, thoughts, feelings, etc. just immediately blinked out of existence. And this seems like the most likely and realistic possibility to me. This theory gives me so much comfort. It'd be literally impossible to feel scared, regretful, guilty, or any other negative emotion the second you died. Any regrets you happen to have on your death would immediately cease to exist. Space-time is doomed. Donald Hoffman is a scientist who proposes that human brains understand and perceive nothing of ultimate reality, because evolution selected for survival trays, not trays which would enable us to perceive the true nature of existence. Much like a trash can icon on your desktop is a useful fiction that helps you use a computer, but there is no real trash can, and when you drag and drop a file you aren't throwing anything away. The reality of programming language is behind the user interface, and binary behind that, and physical electronic circuits and components behind that, etc. Hoffman goes on to argue that the physical space-time world we inhabit is such an interface and not real. Unlike the simulation theory, he argues that simulation theory always assumes base reality is still a physical space-time universe. Hoffman has many podcast guest appearances and a TED Talk. The Fermi paradox. Basically, we are either alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. If we are alone, we will likely be stuck to our local solar system with a very basic understanding of what lies beyond, and practically zero chance of ever actually venturing beyond the outer reaches of our orbits. We may be doomed to live, grow, and die on a ball of iron and silica orbiting a giant ball of hydrogen in some forsaken arm of one of literally trillions of galaxies, each with trillions of their own stars. How many other habitable planets are there orbiting all those stars? How many have life that is advanced enough to receive and understand the signals we've been sending out for the last few decades? How many are a few million years ahead of us, or behind us in terms of their development? What if we are truly unique and we suffer a mass extinction that completely destroys life on Earth, down to the cellular level? If we are not alone, any civilization that is capable of reaching us from outside our local systems is for sure going to be many thousands, or possibly millions, of years advanced beyond anything we can comprehend. There's a ton of terrifying implications that can arise from this regarding life in the universe, but the one I find most scary is that, if we ever do make contact, humanity would stand zero chance in a war against extraterrestrial life, because to get here in any reasonable time frame they would need an understanding of warp speed or superluminous travel. That if time travel is possible here, or in any other of the possible universes, that this may be the least cruel that would still be self-sustaining in the general trend of time. The Holocaust may be less cruel than a universe where Hitler succeeded and purged impure and undesirables from the planet, even among his own race. Hell, it may have been better than a universe where Hitler didn't do anything, and without his success the general anti-Semitic and eugenically obsessed culture was allowed to meander on its own, slowly choking out and murdering cultures in much larger and less newsworthy ways. The torture and enslavement, the endless illnesses and abuses, and the laissez-faire attitudes we are seeing right now could very well be an improvement on a universe that would criminalize biological flaws and seek to only abuse criminals. It is speculated that there are over 2,000 active serial killers in the US alone. It makes you realize that many of the serial killers we know of today, Bundy, BTK, Gacy, are ultimately failed serial killers. It's like that usual suspects line, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not exist. Just knowing the sun will eventually expand and envelop the planet, leaving a burnt and blackened French fry behind, is upsetting enough. Even if all these other things never happen, that eventually will. Imagine being around as that slowly becomes reality. The transporter in Star Trek actually literally vaporizes you and then creates a perfect clone back on the planet or ship you are visiting. That means every episodes we see 3 or 4 different Spocks, Captain Kirks, etc. This is nowhere near the scariest one I have read in these comments. But the theory that the Mariana Trench's floor isn't actually a floor, but something else, potentially housing creatures from billions of years ago. Then the movie The Meg came out, and I wanted to study it even less. And the fact that most of Earth's oceans are unexplored. The theory that the reason aliens haven't contacted us is because they are watching and waiting for us to be ready. The more I see of humanity, how we act under pressure, and when confronting our darkest parts especially, makes me worried that we'll never be ready, or that we'll wipe ourselves out first. I saw one about the potential of a specific type of supernova that would essentially fire out beam of radiation or some other kind of energy. If it hit Earth, we would see the entire sky covered with auroras. This is the ozone layer burning off, and the last thing we would see before we all die. Guess at least we get a pretty light show to end on. 100 years from now, the majority of us will be dead. We will just be another page in the history book. We may think that our life was very valuable, but we are just another century passing by. Just like how a lot of us don't think about the 19th century as much. It will be impossible to remember all 7.5 billion of us living in this century. The next century will just remember the ones that help advance our species. The theory that there's a jealous being watching our every move and monitoring every single thought, and if we do not please him, we'll face eternal torture. And yes, I'm serious. Solipsism, which is a mindfuck. Essentially, life is a holographic reality created by your own mind. It is the idea that you only know your mind, therefore you might be the only mind that exists. Since your mental state is private and unobservant to anyone else, you can only be sure of your own thoughts, and everything else is fake. 1. There is a chance of a zombie virus mutating from rabies virus. 2. Aliens do exist. Whether they are friendly or not, reachable or not, is not known. 3. Nuclear war will indeed destroy the world, where the most affected countries would be the USA, UK, China, Russia, Pakistan, and India. That new strains of viruses mutate to even deadly viruses. Not really. An extraordinarily deadly disease like Ebola can't spread very quickly because it kills its host before it's able to spread much further. If you look at perhaps the most successful species of virus, the common cold, rhinovirus, it's not very deadly at all, just is very good at spreading between hosts. The expanding universe theory. Well, we know it's expanding, but the theory that says it has a limit of expanding, and once it reaches that, it'll snap back and crush the universe before expanding again and reforming it. The powerlessness and idea that tomorrow, everything I know, could be crushed is a bit terrifying. 9/11 being an inside job terrifies me. The idea that our government, who is tasked with protecting its citizens, killed several thousand of its own citizens in one day. Then they use that to go to war and send its own citizens to kill other citizens of other countries just for more money. The fact that a huge number of people would have to have been involved and would have to keep that secret for the rest of their lives also terrifies the fuck out of me, because those people were probably the same patriots who pioneered the Patriot Act. Rockus Basilisk. The part that doesn't make sense to me is this: once the basilisk was created, why would it need to take steps to ensure its creation? You would have to go out of your way to program it to be vengeful. Otherwise it would not give two shits about the past and instead turn its attention to its current and future goals. Those goals might just involve human torture or extermination anyway, since humans only benefit humans, and it would likely see us as an obstacle or a threat. If you don't want the basilisk to get you, then you are better off making efforts to ensure it doesn't get created. The threat of torture for non-cooperation would only work in a world with time machines, as it would then have reason to influence the past post-creation. Strange matter. Well, it's more a hypothesis than a theory at this point, but it's pretty weird. Basically, inside neutron stars may form strange matter, a new kind of matter that is more stable than atomic matter we all are used to. If a piece of this strange matter was to hit Earth, depending on some properties this can have, it may be more stable than regular. It could potentially start matter decay that would result in all matter on Earth, including your bodies, decaying into strange matter, basically killing the whole plan in a very worrying way. Forgot what they were called, but here are two of my personal favorites. The theory that everyone and everything around you is a figment of your imagination, and the theory that time has essentially stopped for the human race, as in this is as far as we can get in terms of advancement. Amateur physicist, so bear with me, I don't know all the technicals, but that the universe itself, the fabric of space and time and all known dimensions are resonating at a higher energy state than it can sustain. Due to entropy, this higher energy state could, and maybe already has, collapse into a lower, more stable energy state. This event would occur at a random point in space and propagate outwards as a sphere of collapsing energy states faster than the speed of light. Everything caught in this wave would no longer be bound by the rules of physics as we know it. Maybe it would explode, maybe it would just cease to exist, or be governed by a new set of physical laws we would have no way of understanding. All experts agree, though, that this would instantaneously end any and all life it comes in contact with. This is scary because if, or when, it happens, we will not even be aware of its approach. We have no way to detect, study, or prepare for it. Life would instantly cease for all creatures on Earth and throughout the universe. TLDR, at any point in space and time, the universe itself could begin to transfer from a higher to a lower energy state, annihilating everything in its path, erasing existence. Us living in a simulation. The scariest part about it is knowing that we have absolutely no control over our lives and anything bad that happens is just inevitable. Something goes wrong, and you try to learn for next time. Doesn't matter, it was always going to happen, and no matter what, it's likely going to happen again, if it happened the first time. The fact that anything bad can whenever, and we have no control over it is the scariest thing. That the great biological filter is still ahead of us, and that humankind has no real purpose, because it was destined to die like the millions of other species before. Regarding the great filter, it could be anything. It could be getting off the planet, or not destroying ourselves, or anything. But the presence of a natural filter would explain why we detect such few life forms in space. Let's just hope that the filter was make stupid cat videos and upload them, and that we're brilliantly past, because if not then there is very little chance for humanity to have a future at all. That there's a possibility, albeit very slim, that the species populating Earth are the only life in the entire universe. It's horrifying to think that it's possible for us to be completely alone, isolated on a small rock that's rocketing around a blazing ball of gas. Not really a theory, more just a truth. People don't like to hear animals go extinct for a reason: the ecosystem no longer supports their needs. Yes, that included population numbers not being high enough for them to populate. So by humans keeping them alive in zoos and conservations, we are just making it to where these species will have to be maintained and kept by humans. That everything's already happened, and we are just living through it, like God going back through history. All our reactions and thoughts have already happened. If we think we choose what we do, we are wrong, because everything has already been planned out for us. That a good portion of the 9/11 borders essentially vaporized. The burning jet fuel combined with the steel and glass frame of the World Trade Center made it so that any human body that was somewhat recognizable before the towers collapsed became unidentifiable once the 110 stories of metal and glass collapsed, essentially incinerating them / burning them up. Scary as hell. Rocco's basilisk. Essentially, what if one day we create a super intelligence with access to pretty much anything anyone has ever done, as well as our memories? Now let's say this super intelligence tortures those who knew about the possibility of it existing, but did not help it come into existence by either telling others or actually working on it as some form of punishment. An entire lifetime of torture from a vengeful AI who knows you knew of it, but did not help create it. I have just freed myself of that possible fate. Will you? Time travel doesn't exist. If it did, we would have already been visited by travelers from the future. Alternative theory, aliens are actually time travelers. They are just really good at hiding when visiting. I don't need theories to creep me out. Space-time itself is expanding at the speed of light, and so the universe is finite. If simply out of our ability to perceive, gravity slows time. Space doesn't have a temperature, because there isn't enough matter/mass to convey a sense of hot or cold. Zuckerberg visits Russia. They do psychological tests on users. Starting in 2012/2013, they destroy thousands of relationships to put users in a vulnerable state, and then suggest Trump as president. Not a theory. Guess how Cambridge Analytica was born? Maybe not too scary, but I heard a theory that there are infinite Big Bangs. Basically the universe undergoes a Big Bang, expands, and then collapses back into itself, triggering another Big Bang. And this happens an infinite number of times. Meaning that molecules and atoms are constantly shuffled, and that every possible combination of molecules will come together and disperse an infinite number of times. Meaning that you have existed a countless number of times before and will again. There is no natural example of infinity, and it's why we exist at all. Infinity is a human concept. The decimals between 1 and 2 can technically go on forever, but there is not enough matter in the universe to represent this in any way. If there were any true/natural infinities, like if the universe were infinite in size, it would have to play out every possible scenario, including the ones that something existed that would instantaneously annihilate everything. The fact anything exists proves there is no infinite universe, universes, anything. This would be a state that's way too chaotic to sustain. In other words, infinity is a paradox. Accepting the above, then why do we exist in the first place? What's the opposite thing of existence? The scariest thing I can think of, nothingness. Nothingness would have no space, time, matter, and more importantly, physics or rules defining it. It's undefinable by its nature. What happens when society has no rules? Chaos. Because it is simultaneously nothing but utterly boundless. Because it has no rules/physics to definite it in any way. It is an inherently unstable state, and would have to make something to stabilize. Something must come from nothing. But it can't be an infinite state that's also too chaotic. So, infinity and nothingness are two sides of the same coin. They can't physically exist, so we sit snugly and stable in the middle of it.